Dímelo, ¿cómo está todo el convete hoy? Te hablan mi club, 1% de los perros, motoclub, motofamilia, ¿oíste? Listen, I got an article that I'm going to be reading for y'all today. An article that I wrote this very morning, and it's a very relevant subject, and it's a very difficult conversation to have, but hopefully by reading this article, I'll be able to convey what I was trying to get across with this article. I've often been told that writing is one of my strongest suits, so maybe my writing will help get it across a little better. So here's this article. It's called Save the MC. Good morning, MC world. Miklo 1%er here, wishing everyone a happy Thursday and a great week. Today, I would like to attempt to explain something, and it will likely be difficult, because for a very long time, most 1%ers simply did not care who was privy to this information and who wasn't, because they realized a long time ago that 99% of people will just never understand. It was always looked at as a situation of, for those that get it, no explanation is needed. For those that don't, no explanation is possible. And I totally understand and agree with that. But in today's topsy-turvy atmosphere of the club world, that lack of understanding by the majority, coupled with the fact that some large clubs have mass recruited to the point of losing their way, has begun to have very negative consequences for many true 1%ers and 1% clubs. So today, I will attempt to at least begin to have this conversation through this article. Systems. People love systems. Systems help your mind to connect the dots. Systems make things work. When you're building a company or a military or any group that has to function together, you'll need a system. The area where so many people become confused in the realm of groups riding together on motorcycles is when they attempt to create and force unto others an all-encompassing system for all groups that ride together. It is the idea that if you ride together with a group of people and you wear a unifying mark of identification, then you have signed up to participate in the system whether you like it or not. They dress this concept up with fancy words like protocol and tradition in order to make newcomers feel more obligated to participate. Then, if you opt out of participating, they gaslight you by making it seem like everyone is on board except you. They say things like, it's fine if you want to do your own thing. The problem is when you try to make yourselves look like those that do follow tradition and protocol, and then you show up and we're supposed to recognize you just because you threw on a patch. Or you have a diamond patch, so that means you're above all these other clubs in the food chain. But you weren't given that diamond by the dominant. So now these other clubs are below you just because you say so. Or the famous "when in Rome" line. Now look, I'll be the first to say, if some group throws on a diamond-shaped patch, then shows up uninvited to other clubs' events and walks into the event yelling, "You are all our servants. Don't you see this diamond-shaped patch?" Then yeah, that group should be disbanded by force, in my humble opinion. But in all my years in the club world, I cannot say that I have ever seen that happen even once. And if it does, it's shut down so quickly that it's forgotten about with yesterday's coffee grounds. 9 out of 10 groups that are either newly emerging or newly arrived in an area just want to mind their own business, ride together, and support each other as brothers. The common denominator in most club violence over the past several years has been larger groups showing up and attempting to force the new groups into submission. The notion of "you'd be fine if you weren't trying to bring your disregard for our protocol to our front door" is nothing more than an attempt at gaslighting people to get a desired result, period. Nobody is obligated to participate in any other club's protocol. That would be like me telling other clubs that they are subject to my bylaws. The only universal debt that all human beings owe one another, especially groups of men of honor that subscribe to the philosophy of the one percenter, is respect and etiquette. The difference between respect and etiquette and a detailed system of so-called protocol is that respect and etiquette are universal courtesies that all men can embrace. Simple things, such as not stealing from one another, not infringing on one another's trademarks and copyrighted emblems, not bad-mouthing each other, introducing oneself with a polite handshake. These types of things are not some written protocol that is handed out to all aspiring motorcycle groups by the government. They are simple, universal courtesies that all people expect from one another and therefore all can embrace. Whereas the idea of a one world, all-encompassing, detailed protocol being forced on everyone whether they like it or not is, in all honesty, the very thing that American outlaw motorcycle club culture was created in rebellion of in the first place. Quote-unquote protocol that dictates a food chain and a detailed procedure of seeking the permission and sanctioning of whatever group dominates the area with their presence. Again, that is precisely the tyrannical oppression that sparked the rebellion that fathered American outlaw motorcycle club culture in the first place. It is mind-boggling that people are even capable of turning around and repeating that same cycle of tyranny within the very culture that was born in rebellion of it in the first place. Nevertheless, here we are. If it weren't an issue, I wouldn't be writing about it, I assure you. Where did the confusion occur, you may ask? In my opinion, the confusion comes from a number of different sources. Number one, the Vietnam War. After the conflict in Vietnam, many returning soldiers were treated poorly when they arrived back in the U.S. because people saw the veterans as the face of the unpopular war. In turn, many businesses wouldn't hire veterans of the Vietnam War. So many of the veterans turned to the only resources they had at the time to survive, which were their fellow veterans, their military training, and their experience from the war. They put those resources to work in the only arena they could at the time, which was the criminal underworld. This, coupled with the popularization of motorcycle clubs through Hollywood, created a perfect storm of post-Vietnam era outlaw motorcycle clubs turning into full-blown criminal enterprises. This meant that they had to carve out territory where they could control local rackets and not have to worry about competition from other clubs. This, in my humble opinion, is a very sad time in the MC world because it was the first step in turning club culture into the very thing it hated most, a system of tyranny and an attack on freedom. The second thing is the influence of the black set, the so-called black set. In recent years, the separation between what was known as the black motorcycle club set and the rest of club culture has become less and less pronounced. Many traditionally all-black clubs now have many white members and members of every race, and clubs that at one time did not accept black members now have changed their ways and have become more or less mixed-race clubs. That's great, that's awesome. But it's important to note the difference in procedure between what is known as the black set and everyone else, so that we may evolve together under universal respect and etiquette that all men can embrace, rather than attempting to cram a detailed system of so-called protocol down each other's throats. The black set is very different from the rest of the club world, in my opinion, because when many of the older clubs within the black set were getting started in the 50s and 60s, there was still an incredibly high amount of blatant systemic racism in the United States. You gotta figure this wasn't too far removed from the days of segregation and Jim Crow and even slavery. So when you're talking about black motorcycle clubs in the 1960s and 70s, it's important to understand that they stuck together out of necessity and survival. Whereas most white and maybe Latino clubs of the time had more of a totally independent, us against the world attitude. In my opinion, it's difficult to say whether one or the other was more aligned with the true philosophy of the one percenter, because the black set operated as one giant entity out of necessity, but they did it in the commission of seeking the same brotherhood and freedom that all other clubs were seeking. The difference being that the black clubs had to fight two oppressors instead of just one. I mention all of this because the black set functioning as one large entity is something that in recent years has been adopted by many clubs outside of the black set as well. A long time ago, the black clubs in this country were forced to have interaction with one another on a regular basis because of things like segregation. So they organized things under a commission-like structure where events could all be added to a calendar so that every club in an area would have the chance to throw their parties and events on days that were assigned to their club and no other. This created a very successful system where all of the black clubs in an area were able to support one another and thus flourish. Now, in recent times, with the advent of social media, this way of doing things has become common among clubs inside and outside of the black set. There have been coalitions and confederations, etc., for a long time, involving many clubs in and out of the black set. But in those coalitions that were outside of the black set, each club's independence was fiercely guarded, and the objective was usually uniting to battle law enforcement, etc., whereas the black set was more of a forced cooperation where the good of the set as a whole superseded the concerns of individual clubs. That's my understanding. Okay, I could be wrong, but that's, from my experience, that's my understanding of it. Another difference is the fact that most clubs on the black set were not forced to participate. On the contrary, they signed up to be subject to the rules of the set, quote unquote, in order to receive the benefits, the safety in numbers, and the access to the huge events and parties that came with it. It's a beautiful thing. The point where it turns into a problem is when clubs turn the concept into a forced proposition. If you have a local co-op of clubs that organize parties on the calendar every year to ensure that every club involved gets their fair share, that's awesome, that's great. A lot of people will likely be glad to sign up and be part of that. But it's when you attempt to force or coerce clubs to participate in your system against their will and under the threat of violence that it becomes, again, a perfect example of the very same tyrannical oppression that sparked the rebellion that fathered outlaw MC culture in the first place. Now again, if you've got your co-op scenario going on and some new group shows up out of thin air demanding the respect and privileges of upper echelon members of the co-op when they as a club haven't taken any of the steps that the co-op requires of clubs in order to become recognized as upper echelon within the co-op, then yes, I agree, said group is in the wrong. But if said group is simply existing, minding their own business, wants nothing to do with the co-op, yet has formally been invited to an event being thrown by a club that is part of the co-op, and then said club shows up to the event that they've been invited to, wearing patches that represent their beliefs, and all they ask from the other attendees of the event is the same universal respect and etiquette that they themselves show to all, then the argument that they expect special treatment when they haven't earned it holds no weight whatsoever. That is why the idea of a one-size-fits-all system forced onto everyone will never work. It must be a scenario where those that sign up to participate in a co-op system are subject to the specific rules of the co-op, and all clubs that do not sign up are only subject to universal respect and etiquette. The third factor is mass recruiting and social media. The third factor causing confusion among motorcycle clubs today is, in my opinion, caused by the combination of two subcategories. The first subcategory is mass recruiting by certain large clubs. Not all, but some large clubs have committed mass recruitment over the past several years. Mass recruiting by large clubs in an effort to remain larger than the clubs they view as their competitors. This mass recruiting causes new recruits to outnumber seasoned veterans in the club, and in turn, those new recruits are not receiving the proper mentoring from those old school members of their clubs. The second category is social media. When those new recruits cannot find the mentoring they need in the club that they've joined, they find it elsewhere, which more often than not nowadays ends up being some self-proclaimed motorcycle club protocol guru on a YouTube channel, preaching their version of quote-unquote protocol, which is then taken as gospel and enforced as such. So then what you got is a young guy that hasn't been taught properly, wearing the patch of a 50, 60, 70-year-old 1% club, and he's learned quote-unquote protocol from some YouTube channel. And he's going to go out there and enforce it under threat of violence. And that's where a lot of problems are coming from nowadays, you know. This then leads to a fraction of motorcycle clubs practicing one thing and other clubs practicing another, which inevitably leads to conflict. So what's the solution? The solution is embrace universal respect and etiquette and forget all about the notion of some detailed system being forced on all groups of riders under threat of violence. The funny part of all this is that we all want pretty much the same thing. We do. We all want the same thing. We just see different paths to the same goal. What is the goal? The goal is for all clubs to be able to ride and wear their patches without having to worry about other clubs infringing on their copyrighted patches or disrespecting them in any way, causing problems. You know, running around, running amok, you know? That's what we all want, is it not? We all want to be able to ride without having to look over our shoulder, without having to worry that there's some local club doing shit they're not supposed to do that's going to negatively affect us, right? So we all want the same thing. It's just there's a couple different paths to get there. One path causes a hell of a lot more trouble than the other path, right? One path is we try to control everybody. More control, more control. And that does not work. That turns us into the very thing we were born in rebellion against. You know? Okay, now the other path is the path I'm proposing, which is that we all forget about it. Look, I'm not saying forget about your idea of protocol. I'm just saying don't try to force it on people under threat of violence. If people want to sign up for it, they'll sign up for it. Don't try to force it on people under the threat of violence. That's where the problems are coming from, right there, okay? So instead of that, the only thing that we can force on anybody is universal respect and etiquette. That's something we all owe each other, right? Everybody can embrace universal respect and etiquette, right? Simple things. My old lady, my kids, my family, off limits. That's universal etiquette and respect, okay? The patches that my club has created, our copyrighted trademark material, off limits. Don't put it on your fucking t-shirts or anything. That's universal etiquette and respect. When we meet each other, take off your glasses, take off your hat, take off your fucking gloves, look me in the eye, and shake my hand like a man. That is universal etiquette and respect. That's not protocol, okay? Protocol, this idea of protocol is coming up with a detailed list of rules and trying to shove it down other people's throat against their will. And that ain't the way this should be, man. So, all right. We all want the same thing. We just see different paths to the same goal. So how can we get there? It's not going to be by trying to force a system down everyone's throat. I promise you that. The constant uptick in violence proves that. Now, the only solution is for everyone to embrace norms that are universally accepted. Norms that, in all honesty, are nothing new in the world of motorcycle clubs. Norms such as, give what you get. There are clubs out there that have been practicing that for a very long time. We give what we get. There is no more beautiful a phrase in this world, in my opinion. We give what we get. Give what you get. Everybody can embrace that. That's not some over-the-top, detailed list of rules being shoved down your throat. We give what we get. Give what you get. Simple. Take none, give none. Same thing. Give what you get. Take none, give none. I won't mess with you. You don't mess with me. I'll respect you. You respect me. That's the concept. There are clubs out there that have been around a long time that have been wearing these concepts on their patches. You know? I won't police your club. You don't police my club. I won't try to subjugate you. You don't try to subjugate me. I won't take food off your plate. You don't take food off mine. My kids, my family, my old lady are off limits, as are yours. That's it. Anything above that is infringing on others' freedom. Yes, a lot of confusion has taken place, and there are a lot of people out there pushing ideas that only further the violence. But one solid brother at a time, we can bring things to where they need to be by practicing universal etiquette and respect, and nothing else. Thank you for reading, and please share any thoughts you have in the comments below. Much love and respect always. Miklo 1%, los perros forever, forever los motherfucking perros. So that was my article today, man. And it's a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a while, man, because there's people out there that essentially push this gaslighting of, you know, yeah, it's fine if you want to do what you want to do, but it's a problem when you bring it to our doorstep. And, you know, when you show up expecting special treatment when you're the one who put the patch on or whatever. No, man. Nobody has ever expected special treatment. Nobody's running around saying, don't you see the diamond? Where's my butler? Where's my servant? Do you not see this diamond? I'm a diamond. Somebody should be bringing me a drink right now. You know? That's ridiculous. Nobody does that. It's gaslighting is what that is. Okay? And it's ridiculous. The only thing anybody demands of anybody is don't mess with me. You don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. My kids, my family, my old lady are off limits, as are yours. You know, give what you get. These are age-old concepts in this culture. They've been around a long time. It's what all of us ought to be practicing. Okay? So that's my rant. That was my article. I hope the message gets across. And thank you for watching.